you knock it off right now, it's gone! Moshahidi with room launches! Kaboom! From another time zone. This is comical, cartoonish, and downright ridiculous. Hey, welcome back for Season 2, Episode 22 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Last week, Fantasy Football Friday, it was about the real breadwinners. I ranked my top 5 PPR running backs for 2025. Then, partly inspired by a data journalism project I'm working on right now, I predicted the MLB MVPs, and we wrapped up with Luka Doncic getting a pretty cool veteran max contract, but missing out on his supermax after the midseason trade last year made him ineligible. This week, let's first hop into NFL quarterback battles going on so far in the preseason and how I think those might shake out in the next couple of weeks before the regular season kicks off. My favorite thing to obsess about at this time of the year in the NFL, it's not the injuries that are picked up in camp, it's not the coaching changes in the offseason, it's not the big draft picks that everybody's excited about. Truly, to me, it's quarterback battles. There are 4 teams, at least, that have real wide-open races right now, and there's a ton of rookies who are going to get a fair shake and see some playing time. Let's look at all of them and get on the record with who I think is going to be the day one starter, plus how long they might last there. The list that we know of, again, that's teams that have an open and publicized quarterback battle, and they haven't picked a starter yet. It's the Saints, the Colts, the Giants, and the Browns. I have done so much on Cleveland and Shedeur and Deshaun Watson and all that. They're going to go right at the very end because I'm sick of talking about it. I'm going to start with the Colts. Boy, Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones are such an odd mix. Neither had particularly big numbers in college. Both were drafted highly anyway, first rounders for, very different reasons. Richardson because he's maybe the most athletic quarterback since Cam Newton. He has all this rushing and passing combined upside, but it's never translated to production. Daniel Jones, because he has good mechanics, he looked the part of an NFL quarterback and he protects the ball. I don't think it's fair to call Richardson a bust yet, considering he's only going into year 3, but man, Daniel Jones tortured Giants fans for years, and he won 24 of 69 starts for them over 6 years. I think he does fall firmly into that category of a bust, for now anyway. Maybe if he really turns it on this year, he could be the Sam Darnold type where later on in the career, on a second contract, he becomes kind of what he was supposed to be. What we do know about Richardson, he is well on his way to being one of the least accurate quarterbacks in history, including guys that, played when the TV was black and white. This guy's got a 50.6 career completion rate, which was precipitously dropped by a 47.7% rate last year on 264 attempts. That's not a really small number where you can say, oh, it's just a sample size thing. He turned that into only 8 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, and somehow actually a pretty decent 6-5 record through 11 starts last year. Maybe worse than any of that is that he cannot stay healthy. AC joint injury in OTAs this year. Dislocated pinky in his first preseason action. Back, foot, hip injuries last year. Rookie season ended 5 games in, I believe, with an AC sprain. And that's just in his 2 years in the NFL. He had his fair share of injuries in college, too. So the Colts, they have options. Do they want an established, more accurate, but average at best quarterback in Daniel Jones, where you know where his ceiling is, with a not-so-good collection of targets to throw to? Or do they want the most physically talented quarterback, but probably the one who is, the absolute worst in the league, or pretty close to it, at playing quarterback as a position, and then gamble that he takes a huge leap as a thrower, while he's still going to occasionally dazzle you with his legs and with his deep ball? All I know is I really wouldn't want to be the GM or the head coaches having to make this call. The Giants' decision, it seems simple enough to me, but if we're in for a rookie surprise, I think it could be here. Russell Wilson has done it all except for win MVP in the NFL. The Pro Bowls, he's won an All-Pro, he's won a Super Bowl, been to another, amassed all these big numbers by being just a quality starter for 13 years. He spent last year in Pittsburgh, he spent 2022 and 23 in Denver, and of course the first 10 years in Seattle were kind of where his legend was written, and he really rewrote their franchise record books. His best days and his best athleticism are probably behind him, But after the Giants cut Daniel Jones last year, they knew that they needed a number of options. Russ comes in on a relatively very cheap contract, I would say, 1 year for $10.5 million, with the understanding that New York would create a battle somewhere between him and someone. That someone ended up being Jackson Dart from Ole Miss at the 25th overall pick. Dart led the SEC in a bunch of passing categories. He also led the whole nation in yards and air yards per attempt, as well as passer rating. He broke most of Eli Manning's career Ole Miss records. And then he started shooting up people's draft boards the last couple of weeks before the draft, as Shedeur Sanders was, of course, precipitously falling, both because of his attitude and his performance in throwing drills at the Combine. Every team in the league wants to get younger, and they want to keep those young players on cheap rookie contracts. That's a really good predictor of, 2 or 3 year windows of success. Plus, Russ would be one of the best backup plans in the league if Dart did win the starting job, considering his track record. I'm leaning, I'll say 75-25 toward the day one starter being Russell Wilson, but if the season's kind of lost down the stretch, which, there's a really decent chance considering the Giants won 3 games last year, you can expect Dart to start at least a couple of games. When you have a shiny new toy, you can't keep it on the shelf and go play with the same old thing, even if it is still good. The Saints. Oh boy, the New Orleans Saints. If they have the worst record in the league this year, don't be surprised. They drafted Tyler Shuck out of Louisville this year in the second round, and he's already going to be turning 26 in September. He spent 7 years playing college football, and it's not entirely by choice. He did have 3 straight season-ending injuries from 2021 to 23. Only in his last year after transferring to Louisville did he ever become a full-time starter, and for his whole career he had less than 1,000 pass attempts. The numbers weren't bad considering that low volume, 59 touchdowns to 23 interceptions, completed 63% for over 7,800 yards in college. And his physical stats at the Combine weren't too bad at all. You had a 4.63 40, not that you put too much stock in 40s, but if you're a guy who's also going to, market themselves as a dual threat, then yeah, you should be able to run a little bit. 1.61 10-yard split, 9.9 broad jump, but his throwing drills were just pretty atrocious in Indy. He has not a lot of rushing value, and we already know that. He doesn't do anything exceptionally well, and although they used their 9th overall pick on a tackle that I really liked, Kelvin Banks out of Texas, the Saints still don't have any offensive firepower even if they can protect him. Alvin Kamara continues to carry the whole offensive load between rushing and receiving. Taysom Hill is, a cool chess piece, but out at receiver, you're looking like, oh boy, what are we going to do here? Juwan Johnson is an all right, a versatile player at tight end, but he's not a huge difference maker. Their other rostered quarterbacks are Spencer Rattler, who managed 4 touchdowns to 5 interceptions last year, and he just looked scared every time he was back there, probably because he was getting his head taken off all the time. There's Jake Haener, who has 18 completions on 39 career attempts. Look, there's no real experience here. There's no reason for optimism, probably. There's not a lot of clarity, as far as I can tell, coming from the team in camp or the preseason, except that Rattler did start the preseason opener. I don't think that means much of anything. Although I made the Colts situation sound kind of dire, at least Daniel Jones has made the playoffs. He has put together some nice stretches before. This is the most no-win quarterback situation in the league, unless somehow 26-year-old rookie Tyler Shuck can do the impossible and move the ball with very little help. And the butt of every joke every year for many decades now is the Cleveland Browns quarterbacks. Whether you like it or not, the 40-year-old Joe Flacco is at the top of their listed depth chart right now, which I'll link in the description. I love that those are published. They have rookie Shedeur Sanders all the way down at their 4th quarterback, and he would presumably be 5th if Deshaun Watson were healthy. That almost always means you're not going to make the team out of camp. For a guy once thought to be a consensus number 1 overall, this must have been the most difficult couple of months of his life. Jersey retired at Colorado. People tore him down for that. He didn't work out at the Combine, but he did bomb the interviews by all accounts. Then he slides all the way to pick 144, and he ends up in Cleveland, the quarterback purgatory. The one chance Shedeur has at getting a good number of preseason reps and moving up on the depth chart is that Kenny Pickett and fellow rookie Dylan Gabriel have been limited with some hamstring injuries. Then, in one of the more cruel twists of fate you'll find, In practice this Wednesday, he strained his oblique. Now the word is Shedeur is probably not going to play in week 2 of the preseason. This is some of the worst timing possible because there wasn't any guarantee that Pickett or Gabriel were going to be available for the preseason at all. The Browns really might have gone from 5 quarterbacks after the draft all the way down to 1 healthy one, and might even have to sign a street free agent for even more competition. Whenever everyone gets healthy in this group, it really feels like Shedeur is going to stay 3rd or 4th on the depth chart. And Flacco is going to be the day 1 starter. Everybody else who does get a chance to play, they'll probably only be due to injury or again because the season is already lost. Oh boy, that is so Cleveland Browns. A few quick mentions at the end here. 14 total quarterbacks went off the board, starting as it does many years with number 1 overall pick Cam Ward to the Titans. He's the biggest and probably the only lock to start among rookies, not just because of where he was drafted and the cost, but because Tennessee's top quarterback last year, if you can call him that, Will Levis, is going to miss the whole year after having surgery on the AC joint in his throwing shoulder. Behind him, it's only some journeyman backups. You got Trevor Siemian and Brandon Allen. And the Falcons situation, strange as it is, seems set in stone. They're going to turn the offense over fully to their 8th overall pick from last year, Michael Penix, and they're keeping Kirk Cousins as a $40 million a year backup. As I see it, those are the current quarterback battles in the NFL and how I expect them to wrap up. And I've made you wait long enough. It's time for Fantasy Football Friday again. My last position that needs a top 5 is tight end. I scrolled through all my notes and confirmed that. I thought I might have already done it, but what I was probably remembering was back in Season 2, Episode 13, it was my rookie watch. That was just the top 5 rookies I liked for this year, regardless of position. The tight end landscape outside of the top 5-ish hasn't been super pretty for a couple of years now, and you don't want to have to throw a dart at somebody on waivers just to scrape out 7 or 8 points in PPR. Who should you draft, and maybe where, to get a leg up on everybody else? Can you ever play a tight end in your flex? Let's put our heads together. My number 1 tight end in all formats for 2025, but especially in PPR leagues, is the Raiders' Brock Bowers. 3 other tight ends in all of NFL history have been named first-team All-Pro as rookies. With a host of weapons, we'll say that in quotation marks, as bad as Vegas had last year, Brock Bowers had to be targeted on almost every single possession. Just a few of the things that he led all tight ends in. Receptions with 112. An all-time rookie record for any position, by the way, not just tight ends. Yards with 1,194. Smashed the rookie tight end record held by Hall of Famer Mike Ditka. Targets with 153. That would be a pace of exactly 9 per game for a full 17. I presume that's also an all-time record, but those numbers don't go back forever, so it's tough to say. And an interesting little aside here, I believe he was 3rd in rushing yards among tight ends, behind Taysom Hill and Chig Okonkwo. It's not super significant, but he does and can line up at Wildcat quarterback, and so he could score a rushing touchdown or 2 at some point to give you even more points. He gets a big quarterback upgrade this year, going from Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew to Geno Smith. And he was already tight end 1 as a rookie. If you want to get technical, he was 3rd in points per game behind Trey McBride and George Kittle, but he scored the most points in total. He will be a first-round pick in a lot of leagues, and in every single league he'll be off the board by the 2nd. Hey, that's still great value if he's tight end 1. In at my number 2 spot, I want George Kittle. Kittle's kind of a living legend. He's, I think, almost cemented himself as a Hall of Famer, and I think he has 1 to 2 more years of being one of the best out there and being the same George Kittle that we know and love. I've put together some insane trade packages over the years to try and get him mid-season, and I've never once been successful. Because every other fantasy owner knows that once you draft him, he's as automatic as there is. He led all tight ends in points per game, though he did miss 2 with injury. That's the scary part. He probably would have beaten out Brock Bowers by a decent margin for tight end 1 if he had played a full 17. He had his 4th 1,000-yard season. He scored 8 touchdowns on 78 catches, made even more big plays probably than normal this year with 21 catches of over 20 yards. And I've mentioned a few times this summer how much I value consistency in fantasy. So listen to where he's ranked among tight ends in scoring the last 7 years. 2nd, 3rd, 20th in a year where he only played 8 games, 4th, 2nd, 1st. That's points per game. Absolute lock. He should be a late second round to early third round pick, and he's going to give you the production of a wide receiver one. If you have another playable tight end and you have, a receiver on a bye and an injury or something, then just flex Kittle and you'll be golden. At my number 3 spot is the Cardinals' Trey McBride. He was probably most famous last year for being utterly unable to find the end zone. He set an all-time NFL record with 98 catches, I believe, before he had his first touchdown, and people were scared, was he going to go the entire season without one? Then, of course, in the last couple of weeks, he got 3 of them. With 111 catches total, one short of Brock Bowers, 1,146 yards, it was incredibly unlucky. But the thing is, Kyler Murray absolutely loves him. His target share was tops among all tight ends. He was targeted 31 more times than their top receiver. That was their prize draft pick from last year at, I believe, number 4, Marvin Harrison. His touchdown rate is almost guaranteed to get better, even though the same narrative followed him in college at Colorado State, where he only scored 1 touchdown his senior year on 90 catches. But you don't control where or when you get targeted. You largely do control what happens after, and that's where McBride excels. He has all the physical skill to keep putting up huge numbers. If he's there at the end of the third round, maybe, you might not want to wait to get your guy. He's my number 3 PPR tight end for 2025. My number 4 choice is not Taylor Swift's boyfriend. I want to drop that in at some point. Travis Kelce is not making this list anymore. His usage is down too much, and he is not as dynamic with the ball in his hands. He is a living legend. He is a Hall of Famer and all that, but he's not a top 5 option. Instead, I want the Vikings' TJ Hawkinson. I will never fail to mention Iowa tight ends because it's just truly strange at this point how many stars that they've produced and how many of them even are active right now. I stashed Hawkinson on IR for a good chunk of last year in one league, but I had another injury. I can't quite remember who it was, so I had to dump him. He played in parts of 10 games with the Vikings, and honestly, his impact was kind of subtle, kind of understated on the field, so this might be my biggest surprise pick. In those 10 games, he caught 41 balls for 455 yards, no touchdowns. That might lead you to think he'd be a super risky pick if you drafted him high, but recall the Vikings' quarterback switch. J.J. McCarthy is essentially now playing his rookie year after tearing his meniscus in the first preseason game last year, and Sam Darnold's with the Seahawks. J.J. liked to target both tight ends and running backs at Michigan in college, where he had some absolute studs around him, Blake Corum and Colston Loveland. Yes, Justin Jefferson is still going to always demand the ball out wide, but a true safety blanket is so valuable for young quarterback development. That was his role with Minnesota in 23, hauling in 95 passes in 15 games for 960 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was tight end 4 that year, so fittingly, let's project him as tight end 4 this year too. And rounding out my top 5 PPR tight end options, it's going to be Sam Laporta with the Lions. Detroit was the number 1 offense in the league, let me stress this, during the regular season. It still hurts. In so many ways, though. 2 1,000-yard rushers, 2 1,000-yard receivers, number 1 scoring team, number 2 in total yards. It was really an outlier season in NFL history. It was, and I hate to say this, almost as good as those 2013 Broncos when Peyton Manning just kind of broke every record at once. Laporta was occasionally the odd man out, even when the Lions had huge offensive games. I don't mind the numbers from last year at all. You're talking 7 touchdowns on 60 catches, 726 yards, tight end 8 finish. That's with resting one game when they had clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC too. Most experts are putting him in the 4 to 6 range because the only change from his rookie year when he scored 10 touchdowns, and if you'll recall, was actually tight end 1 in the league, to last year was volume. All of his rate stats were actually better last year. Law of averages suggests that the rest of the offense is going to take a small step back, and you'll be left with great value if you can draft him as late as the 6th round, maybe the 7th, and you probably can't, but if you can, try it. Honorable mentions. The Browns' David Njoku is one of the best athletes the position's ever seen, and he makes a lot of big plays. The Ravens' Mark Andrews led all tight ends with 11 touchdowns on only 55 catches. That rate is unsustainably high for almost any player on any team ever. However, his team has Lamar Jackson. So I wouldn't count them out for a couple of more great fantasy years together. Those two are unbelievable. And the Broncos signed Evan Ingram as a free agent this offseason. He struggled with injuries and drops kind of sprinkled throughout 8 years in the league, but in 2023, he was tight end 2 over Travis Kelce and only behind Sam Laporta while catching 114 passes. That was just 2 behind the all-time tight end record held by Zach Ertz. Bo Nix is a good, accurate quarterback. He's willing to check it down, and Evan Ingram is a matchup nightmare at all levels. Hopefully this is a match made in football heaven. Those are my top 5 fantasy tight ends, and then some, for 2025. Lastly, I just put another powerlifting meet on my schedule to announce for. It's a federation that I haven't worked with before, USA Powerlifting. You know how it goes. I'll put the link in the description of the episode for you. I think I heard this one is going to be live on Twitch. If I can make a recommendation to anyone who's looking to get started in any kind of streaming, let alone live events, and even more so sporting events, just use YouTube. Every sort of streaming software that I've ever seen works really well with it. It's free. They post your stream right away after you're done with it as a video. It's easy to share links, and most people, regardless of age, already know how to navigate it. I've seen too many events try to get fancy, or they use some different, less popular streaming service for a number of reasons. Maybe they just wanted something that's free and they didn't research it too much. Maybe it's something that's familiar to them, what have you. If the biggest meets in the world stream it on YouTube, you can use it for your local meet with a couple of hundred viewers. There's a tip. And another week down. Fantasy drafts are right around the corners, so I personally guarantee that just about every week from now until January, we're going to have a little bit of Fantasy Football Friday here and there sprinkled in. Thanks for coming back week after week, or if you're relatively new, we are happy to have you. Either way, check out all my socials, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, @TheVoiceOfTanner, X, just Voice of Tanner, YouTube, the whole thing spelled out with spaces, and leave a like, comment, and share. I'll catch you next week. This has been Season 2, Episode 22 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, no.
Oh, you knock it off right now, it's gone! Mo Shahidi with room launches! Kaboom! From another time zone. This is comical, cartoonish, and downright ridiculous.